what kind of life is that to work your entire career to get to retirement and now you're worried about running out of money? You're worried about going on trips or buying gifts or whatever, and you have to live like I mean, it's just like, no, thank you. you know,
Yeah. Welcome to the Next Level Income Show, where it's our goal to take your income, your investments, and your life to the next level. I'm your host, Chris Larson. If you haven't yet, get a copy of our book for free at our website, nextlevelincome.com. That's www.nextlevelincome.com. Just click on the book link, and I'll even send you a copy if you put your address in. On today's show, we have Jeff Anzalone. He is a periodontist who had a wake-up call the hard way, one injury away from losing the only income stream his family depended on. Instead of waiting around, he built multiple passive income streams and turned his story into a roadmap for other high-income earners stuck in the same trap. Through debtfreedoctor.com, Dr. Jeff Anzalone has helped thousands of doctors, dentists, and professionals escape the grind and start building wealth that actually buys back their time. And today, he's pulling back the curtain on a strategy most people never even think about: RV parks and mobile home communities, which we love here at Next Level Income, and why they are one of the most overlooked paths to consistent cash flow and long-term wealth. If you've ever worried about what happens when your paychecks stop, Dr. Jeff's about to show you a better way. Dr. Jeff, welcome back to the show.
thank you. Appreciate you having me back.
Yeah, for those listeners that have not listened to our first couple years episodes, you joined us on our 32nd episode way back. I think it was 2020, probably 2020 when you were on, when we were just getting started, and we're 7 years in. This month marks our 7th year recording.
Awesome.
So yeah, thanks to wonderful guests like yourself. And you've got a new book out since then. You've gone, the industry's gone through a lot of changes. You've gone through a lot of changes, and we were on a panel not too long ago together. And I was like, you gotta come back on and catch the audience up, because you've got so much that you've done. You've got tremendous framework that you've outlined in your new book. And we're going to talk about how the listeners can make work optional for them and the framework that you've used there. But for those that didn't listen to that episode, Jeff, do you mind sharing your story and
Yeah.
how you got to this point?
Yeah. I'll shorten it a lot. A periodontist or a dentist by trade,
Yeah.
and follow the Dave steps, the baby steps,
Yeah.
and that's what I thought everybody back then would do, or we're supposed to do, because, you're talking 2000 to 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
There wasn't YouTube, and there wasn't a lot of the quote financial gurus like there are, now. So it was
Yeah.
mainly Susie Orman and maybe somebody else.
Yep.
And I just went through what he talked about, get out of debt, got out of the $300,000 student loan debt, started the 401k, the practice 401k, and debt snowball and 529 plans and all that. And then we actually went through and paid off that first time. I think I was around 37, 38 years old. So I said, okay,
Yeah.
people would call in, do the debt-free scream or whatever. I didn't do that. But I got to that point. It's like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
Okay, well, now that
Yeah.
you're debt free, you got this going on. I looked around at what other dentists were doing and just work until you're 60, 65, and that's it.
Yeah.
Lo and
Not bad.
behold, about 2 years later, we were snow skiing, which we talked about before we hit recording. We both like to do that.
Love it.
And
Yeah.
I injured my wrist.
Hmm.
And that was the first time I started to question my ability to make money.
Hmm.
I mean, you just don't think about when you go into a career or profession, you never think about, well, what if you can't keep, I guess unless you're like a pro football player or something like that, but
Yeah.
you can get hurt, but you're like not thinking, well, as a dentist, you don't really think, oh, you're going to get hurt. But
Yeah.
I was sitting there thinking, my kids were young at that time, just had one stream of income coming in, dental income, active income.
Yeah.
What would happen? I had a bit of disability insurance, and that really started to change my perspective on how I was operating, and it was very dangerous.
Yeah.
That literally led me down the road to where I am now with multiple streams of income from real estate and other things. But had that not happened, then probably you and I wouldn't be on this podcast now.
Yeah, and it is amazing how those moments in our lives really help make us look and think, wait a minute, like I'm pretty fragile. I mean, I've seen it when my best friend passed away when he was 18 years old, and it really made me stop and think, like, is this really what I want to be doing with my life? And that's when I stopped racing bikes a year later and said, no, there's way more,
Mhm.
to live. And you took you took massive action. Jeff, you first off, how long did it take you? I think I know your story. I think it was 7 years it took you guys to become debt free. Is that right? Pay off that $300,000 student debt and everything else.
Yeah, it took me a little bit longer because I did it a little bit differently because I didn't
Yeah.
want to miss out on investing. So Dave is
Ah, yeah.
talks about don't do any investing until you pay off your stuff. But I
Right.
was
Yeah.
thought I was disciplined enough where I could do both. So
Yes.
that's why it took a little bit longer.
Yeah. No, I love that. And it's a balance, right? Because a lot of
Hmm.
people say, "Oh, you got to buy a house and, pay off your house." And it's like, well, that's great, but like for people like me that have a mortgage, in the threes, it's like, well,
Yeah.
if you can get, returns like, we've seen in real estate, double digits and more, you are giving up a lot to pay down low interest rate debt. So I think there is a balance. And I think Dave Ramsey does a phenomenal job for a lot of people, in those initial steps. But as you said, it's like, wait a minute, if you're young and you start this journey early, you know,
Hmm.
what more can you actually do? And that's what I wanted you to come on and talk about. Your new book. Your new book is called The Ultimate Guide to Work Optional Wealth. So before we dive into those 7 steps, let's talk about, like, what is work optional? Because everybody, I hate to say retired. I don't like the word retire. If you look at retirement, back in the day, it was like, oh, you'd retire, and statistically, you'd only live, a year or two after that. And the
Right.
statistics actually show that people that retire tend to not live very much longer after they do that. And I think it's a very dangerous mindset in a lot of
Hmm.
ways. So, how is work optional different than retiring, Jeff?
Well, people could just ask themselves, let's say most people work Monday through Friday, so they can ask themselves on Sunday evening, like
Yeah,
if somebody says, "Hey, you want to go play pickleball or do something at, 10 tomorrow morning, which is Monday?"
yeah,
If your answer is, "I can't because I have to go to work,"
yeah,
then you don't have work optional status
right.
versus, you don't have to go to work, you go to work because you want to, not because you have to.
Yeah,
And to me, definition is you have enough income coming in that doesn't involve you trading time for money to have the lifestyle that you're living. So if you
yes.
take off 2 months, a year, whatever, and still have the same lifestyle without you
Yeah.
trading time for money, work is optional to you.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, we were talking about skiing. I took my son. He was off school for 2 weeks for his spring break last year, and
Hmm.
drove our Sprinter van out to Salt Lake City, and we spent 10 days hitting whatever resort had the best snow, and it was phenomenal. And I did some work,
Awesome.
around our
Hmm.
skiing because he'd sleep in a little bit, and we were on mountain time, so I got to get up at an early time and get a lot of stuff done. But I love that definition, and I much prefer that over retirement for sure.
Yeah.
So you've got 7 great steps here, and the first one, which I think is, we talk about this with our coaching clients, Jeff, which is have a really clear vision for your life, and that's your first step. Get financially clear. Can you dive into that?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, most people, I'll talk to them, and one of the questions I ask is, how did you hear about me? And it's usually YouTube or something like that. And then I'll say,
Yeah,
okay, well, what are you looking for? And they're like, passive income. I
right.
say, okay, how much? I don't know. I don't know. Okay, well, what are you trying to accomplish with this? I'm not really sure. And it's just, so when you think about your training. Like if you're, I went to dental school. If I'm in college and you ask me, what are you going to do? I don't know. Well, then you're just kind of wandering around versus, hey, I
Yeah.
want to get in dental school, medical school. You're focused. To me, I think we go through all this schooling, training, and when we get out, it's like it's like we don't even set goals anymore. We
Mm,
just kind of wander around and do what everybody else is doing. If we don't really know what everybody else is doing, we get on social media. And it looks
mm,
like everybody's partying and traveling and all this, and it's not really the case. So that's the thing. You have to get clear on what are you trying to accomplish with whatever you're trying to do,
yeah.
and then from there you just kind of work backwards.
Yeah. No, I love that. And it's so important to get clear because, There's a saying, right? Like, either build your dream or you're going to end up working for somebody else to help them build theirs. And, it's one of the questions when I was run sales teams, when I would ask somebody, hey, like, what do you want to do? Like, what's your ideal role? When candidates would come to me and say, hey, what's your advice? And they'd say, oh, I just want a job in the medical device business. I'm like, I would never hire you. Like, you gotta know what you want. You got to get clear on what you want. I think that's so important. And that clarity helps you channel your focus and your energy into that goal and helps you
Mhm.
really eliminate the distractions that you have. And that's super important to
Yep.
do that. You also talk about building your emergency buffer. What did you do for that? I know we love cash value life insurance
Hmm.
for that buffer. It creates a couple different things. It creates one the cash in our insurance policies that we can access if there's an emergency like COVID hit and we
Hmm.
leaned on that cash buffer. Helene hit here in Asheville last year, and I learned something. Unfortunately, if you don't have property damage, but you can't supply utilities because your city can't provide water and power, then you can't legally collect rent. But you still got to pay your mortgage, still got to pay your taxes, still got to pay your insurance that doesn't cover those sorts of situations. So we leaned on it again then.
Mm.
What do you recommend, or what do you talk about with respect to like an emergency buffer, and what are the ranges that are good for an individual or a couple?
I kind of default back to Dave Ramsey's 3 to 6 months. That's
Yeah,
pretty good for most people. But
yeah,
I've changed along the way. I'm more of a 1 to a year, a year to a year and a half, but just a
yeah,
cash buffer. But that's
yeah,
kind of also like my opportunity. It could turn into an opportunity fund now. Like, oh,
absolutely.
I've got a year's worth, but hey, this whatever comes up and I can do it and then fill it back up. But I really
Yeah,
think it boils down to the person,
yeah,
whatever makes them sleep better at night, however many months
yeah.
of, you know,
Yeah, and I love that. And if you're a working couple and you each have 3 or 6 months, that's great. But if you're
hmm.
if you're an entrepreneur, and you have a single income household, then your income can be more variable, and I think that number
Right.
can go up from there. And I love what you just said. As I talk about in chapter 3 of my book, that opportunity fund is like, where do you store your cash in between deals? And
Hmm.
if you can kind of use that and your emergency fund, simultaneously, and look at where your cash flows are coming in. You can really optimize that, so you don't have that cash drag. And one of the big
Right.
things that drags us is debt service. And you talk about toxic debt. What's the difference between toxic debt, in your opinion, and good debt?
I had to change my thinking, because coming from Dave Ramsey, all
Yeah,
debt
all
is
that's
evil and
bad. Yeah,
bad.
yeah,
All
yeah,
debt's
yeah,
bad. You know, super high interest rate debt, stuff I've
yeah,
never had, but I know people that I talk to have
yeah.
credit cards, 20, 25%. Some of these car loans that they got, 10 to 15%.
Yeah.
Sometimes they owe people money,
Hmm.
15%, that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
just anything like that not only does it drain your pocketbook, but it just drains you mentally too. Just knowing in the
Yeah.
back of your head, you're like, man, am I ever going to get out of this? So just really focused on that. And,
Yeah.
not a whole lot of people that I talk to have that amount of toxic debt. You'd be surprised.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what and it's been a long time, but I think that the debt snowball that Dave Ramsey talks about is pay off that, high interest rate debt first, and pay down that, and then move on to
Mhm.
the next one and pay that down, and then pay the next one down, and you kind of go down as the snow. It's kind of in reverse, right? The debt
Mhm.
snowball. You're actually kind of melting the snowball. Whereas, you talk about building your passive income snowball, it's the opposite,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So once you say, okay, I'm clear on my goal. I know how much income I need to have to, maintain my lifestyle, that I have right now. What are the steps that you took, and what are the steps that you talk about in your book to start
Mhm.
building after you've paid off that, debt snowball? How do you create that passive income snowball? I love that. I love that analogy.
Well, one of a really important thing that I didn't talk about,
Yeah.
and this is really going to tell you if somebody's going to be successful or not,
Yeah.
is you got to have a strong enough why. And
Mm,
for me, I
yeah.
knew when I my hands skiing, no matter what it took, and I knew I was going to lose money. I knew I was going to,
Mm,
you know, make mistakes. I
yeah.
wasn't going to quit. And I lost 50 grand on one of my first apartment syndication deals. Most
Mm,
people would have stopped. But
yeah.
if you have a strong enough why, that's going to keep you going. So
Yeah.
whenever you're getting clear on your goals, make sure you write that down. Why do you want this?
Yeah.
So I
No, I'm
think that's
glad
really important.
I'm glad you walked back to that before we talk about, how to build your passive income because it is really important. And I'm trying to remember the if it was Joe. I'm blanking on his name at the moment, but he talks about the name of Dean Graziosi. He talks about how to find your why, and he talks about
Mhm.
going 7 levels deep. And he says, he asks people like, "What's your big why?" And he says, "Oh, like my why is I want to have enough money to not have to worry if I about my finances." It's like, well, why is that? And he goes down 7 levels deep, and it comes down to a lot of things that we experience as children, and those things that are
Mhm.
really really important to us. And I would say my why is that I want to be a present father for my boys because my father passed away when I was 5, and that was really really important to me, and that's what I worked for 15 years, to really drive our passive income, to do that. So I love that. If you can get to that deep why and come back to that when things are tough, to have that grit, that is so so important.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So let's get into some of the nuts and bolts. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you've invested in, the asset classes that you're focused on now, and how you've built your passive income streams, Jeff, and also how you work with investors as well to help them
Mhm.
build their passive income streams. Switching gears a little bit here.
Yeah. I think there's kind of break it down. There's a option A and an option B. I'll start with option A first. Option
Yeah.
A was the typical retirement path. That was the one I was on. You pay down your debts, you invest in a 401k and you work until you're 60, 65 until you can take money out of your 401k, or sometimes people just want to go to you're 65 till you get Medicare, or they go to Social Security age, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the quote traditional path. If that's what you like, there's nothing wrong with it. Path B would be the work optional. Well, what I'm calling path B would be work optional.
Yeah.
You can start along the same path, which is what I did, but you want to. I like to invest for two different things. One, in a 401k, something for that's the growth,
Hmm.
something that's going to grow. Probably will never touch it, but it's growth. Maybe I'll pass that along to the heirs. But
Yeah.
then what I was not doing is what's going to free you up now is cash flowing. You want to invest for cash flow now. People
Yeah.
don't think about that. They look
Right.
at Vanguard's site or their Fidelity or Schwab and money in the market today. Oh, I lost market money in the market. And it's just like, no, you really didn't because you didn't sell anything unless you sold something.
Right. Yeah.
And to me, there's so many what ifs. And a confused person doesn't do anything. So when you spend your entire career producing,
Yeah.
working,
Yeah.
to me, it's got to be hard to just switch that
Mm.
to, okay, have I saved enough? How long am I going to live? I don't know what if the market's up, what if the market's down? What about
Yeah.
capital gains? How does that work?
Yeah.
So to me, in my opinion, that's what keeps people just keep working.
Yeah.
Because they never
Yeah.
know.
It's
And the financial advisors do a
too many
great job
variables. Yeah.
of using us and telling us just a little
Yeah.
bit longer, a little bit longer. I mean, of course, they can make their fees off of us.
Yeah.
That's how they get paid. But in my opinion, you're supposed to be a fiduciary. I like the growth, but I
Yeah.
like the income. And it's very
Yeah.
simple. If you replace your expenses now, if you cost you 10 grand a month to live on
Hmm.
and you start getting 10, 11, 12,000 a month, guess what? That's not real confusing. So it's like, okay, I can go to work and make my, I can pay my $10,000 in expenses,
Yep.
or I've got $10,000 coming in from income producing assets. So I don't really have to work, but I'm working because I want to.
Yeah.
That's not real confusing to me. But and again, you still have your growth investments
Yes.
going. And
Yeah.
that's just what I did. It's not a get rich quick scheme. It's not,
Yeah.
oh, if you just invest in this one property. People will contact me like, Jeff, I invested in a, property like 3 years ago, a syndication, and it's almost like, why am I not retired yet? I'm like, how many other ones have you done? None. I invested 50 grand 3 years ago. I'm like, it's not like that. It's you got
Yeah.
to be consistent with it
Yeah.
because you're consistently getting cash flow and you're consistently building that passive income.
Yes.
Are you gonna make mistakes? Are you gonna fail? Are you gonna lose money? Probably, but you're gonna learn from that.
Yeah.
But again, you have to have a big enough why. But I'm telling you, if I could go back knowing what I know now, 8 to 10 years, work would have been optional for me instead of it took
Yeah.
me 20 years just because I
Yeah.
didn't start on that path, that I'm at now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love, you talked about option A, which is, A stands for, in my mind, accumulation theory, which is you're going to accumulate a certain amount. And then when you hit a certain age, you could spend down, they say the safe withdrawal rate, which advisors will tell you it's about 4%.
Hmm.
I talk about in my book, that number is, by a lot of estimates, as low as 3%. It really depends on when you're invested and what the stock market and the different markets are doing at the time. But there's a lot of uncertainty with that. It's like, well, what does the stock market do? Do you have unexpected needs that come up? What is your asset allocation like?
Hmm.
And it's scary. And one of the things that we can kind of touch on at the end here when you talk about leaving a legacy is, well, if you don't, if you buy term and invest the difference, I hate it when advisors say, well, you don't need insurance. You're really not going to leave your heirs with anything because you're going to kind of spend it down and die before you run out of money. Maybe leave them some. It's like, wow, that's an interesting way to think about it. Or you can grow your passive income. And I found that with a proper plan like that, those numbers you said, I planned for 10 years. I think most people can do it in 5 to 10, about 7 years, depending on how the investments perform during that time. It's very
Yeah.
powerful. If you start working at 25 or you start this plan at 30, to be financially independent by 40 and have work optional, it's incredible because then every dollar you make can go to continue to grow that passive income snowball, give you more options, give you more, money to generate money for other generations as well, contribute, by way of donations, give more freely of your time and those sorts of things.
And then
Um,
something else that you got to think about too, what if you go traditional path
yeah,
and you get to 60, 65 and you have
yeah,
to switch going from accumulating to
yeah.
now, to me, it just seems like that's going to put you into a scarcity mindset
It
because
is.
now it's
Yeah,
like,
it
okay,
is.
I don't want to run out of money. To me, it's like, what kind of life is that to work your entire career to get to retirement and now you're worried about running out of money. You're worried about going on trips or buying gifts or whatever, and you have to
Yeah.
live like I mean, it's just like, no, thank you. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. No, and that's an excellent point, Jeff. I've been asked on a lot of podcasts and a lot of interviews, like, what's the number one thing you look for in partners? And the number one thing I look for is, do they have a scarcity or an abundance mindset? Because when you have a scarcity mindset, it's very toxic in a lot of ways. It's very
Yep.
challenging, and that's very important. And I think that as if you invest for passive income and growth, but have that passive income, it's way more aligned with that abundance mindset, which I really like.
And
Um,
people ask me like, well, how do you tell if somebody has one or whatever, or how do you get one? I said the best way to describe it was
yeah,
say you walk into a room, it's a party,
yeah,
and maybe a dinner party or whatever, and you know how naturally you can do you just say you don't know anybody. You know how you naturally can just scan the room and there's just that person over there and it's just he's got the kind of the scowl on his face or whatever. He is who is he attracting? It's just like he's
yeah,
repelling people
yeah,
versus the guy that's everybody's coming to and he's like this and it's just and it's kind of like that. If you're just in this scarcity mindset,
Yeah.
it's lack. It's you're going to attract all that versus
Yeah.
abundant. I mean, I can't tell you. I could sit here and tell you all day long all the different stories of just from having that abundant mindset. And one of the
Yeah.
last mobile home park raises that we had, and it was just like we needed whatever amount of money it was to close it out, and it was coming down to the deadline, and I was like, we're going to get it, and it was like the next day this guy calls up and it's like, hey, I want to drop that almost that exact amount. I told my wife, I was just like, it happens. It's just
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but
Yeah.
it happens.
Yeah, tune in, people, define it in different ways, whether you believe in God as I do, and or some people say the universe, but tuning into that energy. I heard Tony Robbins. He was being interviewed by Theo Vaughn. Hilarious,
Yeah,
hilarious.
yeah, yeah.
His interviews are hilarious, quite entertaining. But Tony Robbins said, look around the room for things that are brown. And he looked around, Theo looked around, and he goes, now close your eyes. And he goes, all right, what in the room was red? And Theo said, I don't know. And he goes, now open your eyes and look for what's red. He goes, yeah, there's red here, red there. He goes, when you tune your mind to what you're looking for, he goes, not only do you see what you're looking for, hey, I'm looking for things that are brown. He said, but also you'll take things that maybe aren't exactly what you're looking for and use them to help you in your endeavors, like with your big why, that direction that you're going. He goes, did you pick anything that wasn't quite brown, like beige? He goes, yeah, like that over there. He goes, exactly. When you have that abundance mindset, when you're tuned in, you know where you're going, you're clear on what your
Mhm.
vision is, it really helps you get there. And I love that story, like you mentioned. It's incredible how that happens when you're going out there and you have your energy aligned properly. Jeff, I want to before we have to wrap up today. I know you just mentioned mobile home parks. I know you also invest in RV parks as well. Share a little bit about those asset classes. Our listeners have heard about mobile home parks before,
Mhm.
but how are RV parks different than mobile home parks, and why are you a fan of those asset classes?
I'm a fan because I was in all the different asset classes before: apartments,
Yeah,
self-storage, Airbnbs, and then once I
yeah,
got into RV parks and mobile home parks, I could
yeah,
compare the difference. And
yeah,
being from Louisiana, there's a
yeah,
lot of mobile home parks. There's a
yeah.
lot
Big in
of
the
RV parks
southeast.
around, so
Yeah,
I was used to seeing that. But I didn't realize. I was thinking RV parks are for blue-haired people that are retired and they come and stay there. But once I started investing in it, I
yeah,
realized there are those types of people. There's people that stay weekly or monthly, they're workers, and there's people that live there
yeah,
permanently. But
yeah.
there's also all these different streams of income
Hmm.
that if you own the park, that you can also, for
Yeah,
ice,
yeah.
propane. We have a park, two parks in Montana. We do a lot of propane, firewood,
Oh yeah.
e-bike rental, golf cart rental. So there's
Yeah.
there's multiple streams of income that you can do versus our mobile home parks. It's mainly just
Yeah.
lot rent. It's
Yeah.
very affordable. There's not a whole lot to insure, because people can just storms coming, you just hook up your RV and
Roll
away you
out.
go.
Yeah.
So it's been pretty incredible journey.
Yeah. No, I think we're huge fans of mobile home parks, and there's even some that kind of blend the two. They do kind of
Yeah.
short-term rentals with tiny homes and
Hmm.
different things. And I
Yep.
love it, especially, you're mentioning Montana, some of these high expense resort areas, mobile homes or tiny homes are filling that gap in a big way. And you can get pretty innovative with some of the local codes and different things that are out there. We've got the link here in the show notes for your new book, Jeff, which is I got it pulled up right here, The Ultimate Guide to Work Optional Wealth. If people want to get a copy of the book, if they want to learn more, you got a phenomenal website. You guys are at Debt Free Doctor are big as we are at Next Level Income on helping educate people how to get to financial independence. But
Hmm.
also, if investors want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, typically the website, or
Yeah,
I'm really active on my YouTube channel, and the YouTube
yeah,
channel link is on the website too. And just comment. If you comment on a video, I'm usually pretty. I'm probably more active on the YouTube because I'm so focused on that, because that's how I learn.
yeah.
I listen to podcasts like this on YouTube, or I watch videos. So I'm always on YouTube, and I think it's just a great platform.
Yeah, no, your website's got a ton of education and information. You can go to the Education Hub and check out Jeff's YouTube channel, his podcasts that he's been on, his books as well, and you can learn about more about his investments there too. Dr. Jeff, it's always good to see you, my friend. I'm
You
so
too,
glad
Chris.
you decided. Oh yeah, so glad you came back to share, some updates with our audience here. And from episode 32, we're almost episode 300. So thank you for being a part of our
Oh,
journey.
nice. Glad to be part of your journey with you. Doing awesome things.
Thank you, sir. Hey, Chris here again. I hope you found this episode valuable. Now, I have one more thing to give to you. We have a page for my coaching clients where you can get a free copy of my book, as well as much more from previous guests on the show. Just check out nextlevelincome.com/coaching to get a free copy of my book, audiobook, and much more. I'll send you a copy of my book and cover all the shipping costs as a thank you for listening to the podcast. Also, please like, share, and take just 90 seconds to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts.